Oh, I could just talk. That would also work. I've used a lot of streaming software in my day. This is probably the most ineffective shit I've ever used. Not even kidding. Like the steps that you have to take in order to actually start streaming, there's like 10 of them, and you have to redo them each time if there's a screw up. It's absolutely annoying. All right, so actually people are popping in now. Oh, I'm very close. I'm very close. All right. So now I'm going to lose my mind. Are we ready for that to happen? I'm sorry, but when you spend this much time trying to get the thing to work, you have to do it. It has to happen. There's really no other option that you have at that point. Oh man. So let's just see if people start typing and talking, because at this point I'm just kind of chatting at myself. I at least want to. I like to see somebody in, so I know that I haven't completely lost it. Well, actually, I already know that. That's been made clear. Keyframe frequency. Well. Oh, you're bringing me in the bathtub with you. That is exciting and quite dangerous, I would assume. Well, I mean, it's not like a phone is a toaster, but, I hate smartphones. Uh, so, yeah, there's a few things. One of them I can't do as effectively as I was going to do earlier. And that was I wanted to react to a live stream. Not a live stream. I wanted to react to a video. But I'm now oh, I have coffee. It's probably really cold now. But I wanted to react to a video and I wanted you guys to see my genuine cuz I have a I have a very telling face. I have a very animated face. So when I hear people say something that's whether it's just inaccurate, a flub or just blatant misinformation, it's obvious that I've recognized that. And say what you will about the guy, I'm referring to him, as far as the focus on him in this case for sure. It's basically his clinical work as a psychologist, but I enjoy Jordan Peterson's work. I I like his stuff. Um, even yeah, a lot of people enjoy that. It would be hard to do live though. I think I'd feel the pressure until I got used to it. But yeah, I really like Jordan Peterson. There are some people that have, I don't know, decided that it's the thing to do now to not like him. That now that's the edgy thing to do, and I'm just like, no, he's a good. His lectures are good. Come on. Um, so to hear that he's now in rehab, or at least in a rehabilitation facility of some sort. Um, and that's the thing. I haven't read details on that, and simply just know that he is in a rehab center. Whether that is just for facilitating the medical detox part or what, I'm not quite sure. So, because it could be for that, it could be for more, who knows, especially because of what he's coming off of, which is something I'm very, very familiar with. Uh, Great minds, uh, freak out the same. He was using and became dependent on a medication that I take. It's Klonopin, and it's in the same class of medications that like Xanax and Valium and that kind of stuff. And it's basically it's for anxiety. Um, and taking that kind of medication over any period of time, no matter who you are, you will become physically dependent on it. It that's just what's going to happen. Um, so having somebody like being watched over, or having medical assistance when you're coming off of it is actually a good idea. Otherwise, it's just a very, very slow taper. But also, he was apparently dealing with issues with learning that his wife was very sick. And I mean, the guy has been constantly in the media and the press for like the past 2 or 3 years with no breaks. I mean, come on. So there's somebody that did a video on him and presented information in a way that it clearly wasn't coming from any sort of references, any sort of medical journals, anything like that. Can we guess who? Can we guess? Yeah, that's another thing too. Those medications, actually, two of them are used to treat seizures in different ways. But coming off of those medications cold turkey, uh, a side effect of that can be a seizure. Um, I don't want to get too into the neuroscience of it, but it's essentially related to GABA receptors. The same thing happens whenever somebody that's very, very alcoholic stops drinking. Uh, so it's related to GABA. But yeah, um, somebody screwed up the very basic science of explaining these things. And I feel like when it was being talked about and that was being said, that there was clear, um, it was clear that whenever he was talking, he was referring to people and a situation from before where this also similarly happened. I just hope that he doesn't make 5 videos on it where they're all wrong. Um, do we have any guesses? Who is this? Who's this person that has some credentials but not quite credentials, but enough to talk about it? Which I'll discuss what's not being understood about that part either. Class, do we have any guesses? Do we have any guesses for the person, or does no one care? Nobody care. Okay, so that sounds like actual epilepsy. I'm not going to leave it up to the public. I'll leave it as unlisted. If you so desire to watch this again, I'll just have it unlisted. I don't know how I'd be able to get the URL to you. I have an idea, but I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to also sell you something in the process. Well, welcome. I haven't been on for too long, and I've mostly been griping about the fact that this has been a pain in the ass to get started. Um, but and I still haven't gotten into the meat yet. Actually, I can bring, since I don't have it. Um, I'll bring it up so then I have something to refer to here. Oh, he, he's going after. Oh, hey Gary. Okay, so now, and preface. This isn't our knitting hate discussion group. That's not what I want to facilitate by any means. We're not here to knit and to spew vitriol. I just want to make it clear that the the guy's wrong. I don't care who you are. I would tell the same person that this is not accurate, and that it's unfortunate that there's a continued repeat of this. Now it's telling me that I have some kind of keyframe frequency thing. Like I said, the most unnecessary, complicated shit ever. But, so let's. Okay. I'm just gonna bring up the transcript because what I'm doing is basically looking at the information presented and explaining it a bit further. And so then that's kind of like, okay, I that makes me seem like I'm some kind of hypocrite. Like, oh, well, here's this guy that he's been attacked for, not having credentials, all this other stuff, blah 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 blah. Who the fuck am I? Well, I'm somebody that actually does research, and whenever give information, I cite a source. So it's not just me saying something. It's not just from my mouth of reliability. No, it's because I'm referring to studies that have been done. I'm simply just putting it together. And you can then go and check everything that's in there. Because research papers exist. Like, that's what you do, is whenever you're presenting a point and explaining something, you have your sources that you point out and say, this is where I got this from, or here's a study that I did on my own because I'm qualified to do so. But it's clear that I'm not, I'm not gonna be doing any studies or anything like that. Chris isn't either, but I do research and understand how these things work and can present it in a way that hopefully other people can get as well. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger, since trying to make this slightly more fancy. So let's look at the transcript of this. So I was really tired of arguing with ignorant people on the internet. Ow. Unf- for people that haven't ever talked to me like one on one, they don't realize the level of sass that I sometimes have and that I poke at people, and then that's just kind of a part of who I am. So if you read something that I might say, like in a tweet or whatever, and you don't know the tone in which I would use, I might come off not so great, and that was definitely the case. He thinks I have no chill. But apparently, when I use the other screen, well, there's one monitor that I'm not really doing a whole lot with. That's just I have to keep OBS maximized so it takes up one entire monitor. It's because OBS doesn't want to work with Windows 7. Um so okay, let me try to get back into this. But yeah, he's tired of arguing with ignorant people on the internet. Well, I'd like to think that I'm not quite ignorant, but then again, he's saying people, not person. So I don't know what the other discussions are like or anything like that. Um, but I'd like to think that whenever I present something and point out things, that I'm coming at it with the information necessary to do so. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't just say, oh, you're wrong because I have a hunch. I might say that, but I'm not going to use it like officially. Um, so he starts off pretty defensive. And the thing is that this is a medication that I've been on. This is something that I actually have personal experience with. And something that has concerned me is that there's a lot being said about anxiety, as well as how there's a difference between anxiety as well as grieving and loss and trauma. Like, these are kind of different things. And the coping mechanisms for which we have them. Um, it's not to say that because somebody might need these kinds of medications for an extended period of time, that they, you know, aren't trying to push themselves to do better. There are people that need these kinds of medications in order to function as people. I'm one of them. I probably wouldn't leave my room, but that's a different sort of situation. So it's unfair. The thing that's an issue with Chris's presentation and arguments is he seems to think that there is a one size fits all sort of, method of going about this, or that there's a huge preferential sort of method to go about this. And that's not necessarily the case. It is very much, per the individual and what is best for them and what works best for them, even if it's unconventional. Um, I know that, my treatment method is fairly unconventional. Um, okay, you guys have stopped talking. I just get concerned whenever it's quiet. I know that sometimes people just like to listen, to me discuss things. Um, Again, I'm trying to just go over what's being said. The man has an ego, as he hasn't had an equal in many years, and he has had many colleagues back down due to how annoying he can get when he knows he should be recite. Right. And, you know, it's also important to say that I'm definitely not trying to cancel anybody. Um, Nor do I really think that the whole term cancel culture, you know, my understanding of that is a little bit different. Again, I won't get into that. I just like to point out when things are inaccurate or perhaps explained poorly. Um, and it's information that's not put out there well, and using your personal experience of having an addiction to even even just one substance isn't necessarily a qualifying thing, nor is how many years of sobriety that's gone with it. While those are certainly, beneficial and speak to being committed to what you're doing and having a good record of that and helping others do the same, um, it's not necessarily a requirement, because I, you know, that's not been the case for me, but I've certainly talked to people about addiction, and understand a lot about it. So I wouldn't want to say that that's sort of a qualifier. Um, but it is really important to understand that, first off, the substances that he's talking about, whether they are prescribed or whether they are fully illicit substances, um, understanding at least a little bit of how they work. And what was there was something that was pissing me off, like, uh quite a bit. I'm trying to get to it. See, I don't know how I feel about showing the video and then reacting to it, like in a real time sort of manner. Should I just go ahead and do that, or is everything is shit just gonna hit the fan? And I mean that with my connection being so crappy, or whatever the hell's going on with this. That. Mm, okay. What? I didn't say anything about a pirate. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and play this and pause it so that you can just get a genuine sort of response, or what have you. And again, this is me giving information as I spot inaccuracies with information. This isn't an attack on it. It doesn't matter who would be saying this. Um, Aside from pointing out if it's been a habit of the individual. So let's do this.
Peterson's daughter, Michaela, just released a video over on her YouTube channel discussing some things that are going on within the family, as well as Jordan Peterson checking himself into a rehab. All right, so in this video, I might come off a little insensitive, but I'm telling you guys, I'm really tired of arguing with ignorant people on the internet.
Doesn't that just sound like that's directed at something specific?
What is up, everybody? This
You
is
can't.
Chris from The Rewired Soul, where we talk about the problem, but focus on the solution. And if you're new to my channel, what I try to do is take different topics going on in the YouTube community or pop culture and try to see what lessons we can learn from them to improve our own mental and emotional well-being. And
You can't hear at all. Okay, I got a thumbs up. And then I got a can't hear. Okay, it was on. It just wasn't necessarily
Two things
loud.
that I'm really passionate about are mental health and addiction recovery. So if you're into any
I'm
of that
trying.
stuff, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. And real quick, we're going to be talking about mental health. We're going to be talking a lot about anxiety, because that's one of the reasons Jordan Peterson checked himself into rehab. So if you're struggling with anxiety, be sure to check out my book, Rewire Your Anxiety. I'm a recovering drug addict and
That's okay.
alcoholic. And although I'm on anti-anxiety medications, they're non-narcotics. So this whole book, a lot of it, I dive into the neuro.
I might touch a bit on this later. The medication he's on isn't necessarily classified as an anti-anxiety. It's an SSRI, which is mostly an antidepressant.
Neuroscience, I dive into the pros and cons of medications, but there are a lot of coping skills in there as well to help you manage your anxiety. So the link will be down in the description and in the pinned comment below, and it's available in both ebook and audiobook format. All right, so before I jump into this topic about Jordan Peterson going into rehab for becoming addicted to his anxiety medications, if those of you who don't know me, you're probably like, who the hell is this guy? What are his qualifications? So, hi, I'm Chris. I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic.
He was preparing himself for that.
And I've been clean for 7 years, okay? My sobriety date is June 23rd, 2012. All right, not only that, but I was working in a dual diagnosis drug and alcohol treatment center for a little over 3 years. We had every level of care, from detox to a partial hospitalization program to inpatient, outpatient, aftercare. And I'm currently pursuing my CADC, which is a Certified Alcohol and Drug Counselor's License. All right, so I have a lot of experience, kind of know what I'm talking about, okay? So
That sort of experience doesn't necessarily mean that you know what you're talking about. And what I would offer there is a bit anecdotal. But to work in a detox center, you don't necessarily have to understand the science behind a lot of these things. So, reaching, maybe.
I will link Michaela's video down in the description below. It's sad, man. It's a really sad story. So Jordan Peterson's wife, which is Michaela's mom, she was diagnosed with some pretty serious cancer. And that's stressful for any family. And on top of that, Michaela discusses how, you know, during one of the surgeries, there was a medical mistake. There was like a 1 in 20,000 chance, and it happened. So it's very stressful. Like, Jordan Peterson is worried about his wife, you know, dealing with this terminal illness and watching her go through this pain. So I believe Michaela said his doctor prescribed him clonazepam, and that's an anti-anxiety medication. For those of you who don't know what that is, it falls into the medication class of benzodiazepines. So it's in the same category as medications like Valium and Xanax, all right? So I'm on an anti-anxiety, antidepressant.
Okay, so that is all correct up until what he just said. Yes, there are a class of medications called benzodiazepines, and it's what he listed. I'm actually on the one that was mentioned. I take Klonopin. There's also medication that are anti-anxiety that are not benzodiazepines, that are not quite as strong. Even one of them is a medication that's an antihistamine. So, you know, it works in different ways, but essentially it's different levels of abuse potential. Now, there are some medications such as SSRIs which can help with anxiety, but don't necessarily address the acute panic attacks like as they happen, whereas a medication like Xanax would work primarily on that. Now, if he was getting prescribed something specifically for an incident where Jordan Peterson was getting prescribed something because he's dealing with trauma, that's not uncommon. Sometimes whenever people, you know, go through a traumatic experience, their doctor will offer them a 10 to 14 day prescription of an anxiety medication because of what's going on and being processed at that time. And panic attacks for a person that hasn't had them can be very, very scary. So that's not particularly, uncommon. Again, they'll probably try to give you something that is not going to be as strong. But again, it does happen.
Medication. It's Prozac. I was previously on Lexapro, but these are non-addictive substances, all right? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the first thing I want to talk about with Jordan Peterson checking himself into rehab is this, like I said in the intro, I'm so sick and tired of arguing with ignorant people, and some of them are just in denial, all right? So these medications, like, they make you become dependent, where your body needs them in order to function. So based on what we know about Jordan Peterson, I wouldn't...
The way that it's a physical dependency because of the release of GABA receptors. Anxiety medications work in a way that is more of a part of the brain that is controlling sort of the fight or flight response, and clearly calming somebody down. And when a medication is facilitating that for an extended period of time, those receptors no longer work because an exogenic factor, something outside of the body, is controlling it for it. So whenever you go through withdrawal, it's the body relearning how to do that process on its own. So that's essentially what happens.
Even necessarily just assume that he's an addict. What we do know for a fact is he became dependent. All right. So
anybody would become dependent on those kinds of medications if taken after a significant period of time, and also depending on the dosage. So about averages 5 to 6 weeks at a pretty consistent dosing, a person would start to experience elements of physical dependence. That does not mean that they are abusing the medication in any way. It's really just a process of tapering off of it properly. Now, Jordan Peterson has talked about in the past, when he was probably like in his late teens, early 20s, drinking a lot. And one of the things that he got into as part of his studies was studying addiction, because of the fact that where he grew up in Alberta, Canada, there was a lot of people that drank quite heavily. So that was something that he actually studied, and you can check that on a lot of his lectures where he talks about issues with alcoholism that he was around whenever he was growing up.
One of the issues in current times is we prescribe medications all willy-nilly. One of the reasons they prescribe benzodiazepines is because they're fast-acting, all right? They're also known as tranquilizers. They go straight to the limbic system in your brain to kind of chill everything out. But Jordan Peterson tried to get off of them. As his life circumstances started to chill out, he tried to quit them cold turkey, which is something you should never do with...
I'd really want to see the source on this, because I would think that somebody, I would think that Jordan Peterson would know that you don't just stop a medication like that. I would think that he has the foresight to not do that. So I haven't been able to yet read much on it with his personal experience, but then I also know that a lot of articles on Jordan Peterson are very biased. So I was hesitant and knew that if I were going to start looking up articles that I'd have to really gather quite a lot.
Benzodiazepines, because the withdrawal was so bad. This is why he checked himself into a rehab.
That's not substantiated.
So one of the reasons I'm so frustrated is because a few months ago, I made a video about Suboxone. Those of you who don't know what that medication is, it helps people come off of opioids. So my drug of choice was prescription opioids. I actually didn't use Suboxone when I got off of it, but if it was an option, you best believe I would. But all I was trying to do...
So you wouldn't have toughed it out and just gone with the Vivitrol shot? You would have done Suboxone that's interesting. I don't know why. Will you all just let me know when it's back? It returns back. I don't. Yeah, guys, let me know whenever it stopped buffering. Like, it says on my end that it's fine. Again, this is so frustrating. But I like that he clearly is still bringing up the Suboxone video. But when you make 5 or 6 videos on something with, and none of it has concise information, yeah, you know. I mean, I think that I had 2 separate screens of where it said all of my sources cited. Like, there were that many. All right.
Do in my videos was explain to people, like, just know the risk of long-term Suboxone maintenance. And I had people freaking out and losing their mind. Like, I'm not anti-Suboxone.
I was clearly losing my mind.
I just want people to be equipped with the proper information. And the proper information is medications like Suboxone will become addictive or make you physically dependent. So if you're like Jordan Peterson and you get to a place where you want to come off, you are screwed. This is why
You're
we
not
recommend
screwed.
short-term Suboxone.
Okay, no, this is not, again, this is not accurate. You're not screwed. If you're on a medication in which your body becomes physically dependent on it, you're not screwed. A lot of these medications, you just have to taper off of them slowly and under supervision. This is true for medications that aren't even considered to be habit forming or addictive or what have you. Like a lot of antidepressants, whether SSRIs, SNRIs, Wellbutrin is one of them, even though that's not in a particular category. Oh, good night, Brianna. These are all things that you, especially if you're on a higher dose, you have to gradually taper off of it. This isn't just the case for addictive or potentially abused substances. So it's misleading to say that.
And maintenance. All right? Now, you don't have to listen to me. Do what you want, boo. But you might run into...
Please don't call people that. That's weird. Stop it.
...into a situation like this. But when it comes to Jordan Peterson and the benzodiazepine he was on, so like I said, in my book, Rewire Your Anxiety, I discuss medications. And like I said, I am on an anti-anxiety medication, but it is not a benzodiazepine. Well, but withdrawal from this substance is so dangerous.
Anti-anxiety medications that are listed as anti-anxiety medications are things like, let's see. Oh crap! And now I forgot the name of it. It begins with an R. There's one that is, like I said, it's similar to an antihistamine. There's another one that's a non-benzo Buspar. It's Buspar. So there are medications that are classified as anti-anxiety. That's how they're classified, and they're not benzodiazepines. Now, a medication, again, that will work on anxiety, that might be something, that's classified as an antidepressant, but it just has the similar, it'll also work on it as well. Anywho, it's misleading.
The 2 most dangerous substances to get off of because of the dependence are alcohol and benzodiazepines. Like,
that's actually true.
Coming off of those without medical supervision can lead to death.
That's actually true.
Or seizures, okay? Like, whenever people DM me and stuff like that and like, hey, you got any tips about, quitting this substance? I'm like, yeah, get medical help. Like, I used to teach my clients this. Like, we don't give out awards, all right? We don't have like an annual award ceremony where we hand out trophies to people who quit cold turkey. Like, see a damn doctor, all right? Like, when I was working in the treatment center, we had one woman who was addicted to benzos for years, And even under medical supervision, even with anti-seizure medications, she had like 4 or 5 seizures her first month. So thank God she was at our facility and under medical supervision.
Part of what they'll do to treat that as well, and again, a way to prevent that, and I don't know if they were just completely taking her off of it or what have you, but tapering off of the actual benzodiazepine is probably one of the safest things to do, or switching to one that has a longer half-life. Klonopin is one of the ones that has a longer half-life. And then there's another one, Librium, which I think is probably the one that has the longest half-life, and is used to often help people transition into something that's not quite as severe. Additionally, they will also give you things like phenobarbital, gabapentin, Keppra, things similar to that, depending on, what medications a facility can get the cheapest. But yeah, it's a combination of those things. Acupuncture? Yeah, not for me. Yeah, but whatever works. I have thoughts.
Supervision. There was another time when I was teaching a group, and there was this one kid who was clean for like I think a month and a half or so. But when your body builds a dependence, like your brain and your body don't just bounce back to equilibrium right away. It can take some time.
That's called homeostasis. That was a vocab word in my video. Should have watched it. He probably he did. Gnashing his teeth.
And I'm in the middle of doing this group, and I've never seen somebody just have a seizure like this right in front of my eyes. But I'm just teaching a group, and he just turns stiff as a board, falls out of his chair, and starts having a seizure. So like, just know I'm not anti-medications, but I do try to teach people how to look for every other option before looking at benzos like Xanax or Valium or what.
Okay, and that is typically the course of action that a doctor will go. It would be very unreasonable and poor practice for a doctor to immediately say, somebody come in with anxiety issues or stress or what have you, and they do, what they did to my mom and just gave her Xanax, when really my mother needs to grow up, despite the fact that she's a 70-year-old woman. But you can't just start at 11. You have to start with something that, to see if something with less side effects, that is overall safer, is a better option instead of going to something that's going to be high octane. So usually they'll, even say like Benadryl or something like that, or whatever, and then put you on an antidepressant that's an SSRI that has anti-anxiety effects to it as well. The guy who originally founded acupuncture got it from the ghost of a dead surgeon. He had... Oh. Interesting. I just know that with chiropractors, there's a lot of, interesting lore, so to speak, about it. I don't necessarily know about acupuncture. But yeah, whenever you're looking for something to help treat anxiety, start with the kind of the simplest option that you can find. And then even if you do start, needing to be on a medication that's a benzodiazepine, try to, say, okay, let's do this for 2 weeks or a month or something like that. A short duration of time. They're not supposed to be used for long durations of time. And then also be, getting therapy, working with your psychiatrist at the time, to be getting through what's very difficult to need those medications. And then there are some people like me that, due to having PTSD very severely, I this is unfortunately my option. So there are strange cases.
what Jordan Peterson was on, clonazepam, all right? So the
This.
second part of this video is going to come off a little insensitive, but
No.
I just want you to know this is nothing towards Jordan Peterson or his family or anything like that. Like,
Don't hurt
this
my
is a
homie.
devastating, brutal situation to be in. What I'm about to talk about, it's mainly for a certain group of people on the internet who just has the whole conversation about mental health just twisted. All right?
Is it
for
your
those who don't
haters?
know, earlier this year, I was canceled. I had hundreds of thousands of people coming at me and saying, "You're not allowed to talk about mental health. You're not a mental health professional. You're not licensed. You don't have a degree."
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here. Again, I don't understand. The term cancel culture is something that I don't. Any term where it's just like a word and then the word culture after it, I just think it's all made up shit. But I would think that if you were actually canceled, that you would no longer have a channel or be deplatformed. That it's a bit different than, criticism and even constructive criticism. I mean, it takes a lot for me to want somebody completely off of a website. There's actually specifically one person that I really want off of YouTube. And I think that it's pretty easy to say who that would be. Because I've actively tried to do that, and it's because they're a real physical danger to people. But misinformation, fortunately, there are people that will watch and challenge those claims. Like what I'm doing right now. I don't think I'm being a dick. Some may take it as such, but again, I just am hearing information and giving what is accurate. This is a live stream, so I don't have, medical journals pulled up, but you can check what I'm saying. It checks out. But yeah, I haven't read the book. Anyways, we'll get back to this.
Agree. Like, this is a situation that we need to look at, okay? Jordan Peterson is a psychologist, okay? He has a degree in psychology, helping people with their mental health.
He has a doctorate. That's a big piece of paper. I wouldn't say this. His doctorates, and like taught at Harvard. It's more than a degree, but at any rate.
Not only that, but he's a professor. He teaches other people how to get a degree in psychology. All right? Aside from that, he has also wrote a best-selling book called The 12 Rules of Life, trying to help people out there deal with suffering, okay? And how to become better people. And even this man had to turn to a substance that has made him develop a
He is a clinical psychologist. He is a clinician. You kind of have that is kind of, you do have to say that, regardless of what else you might think. He is a clinician.
Physical dependence because he didn't have the tools necessary to deal with this devastating, inevitable life experience. So again, this is not a dig at Jordan Peterson. What I'm trying to say is, listen, you guys, like, maybe it's possible that people without a degree know what they're talking about, okay? Because like I said, I've been clean and sober for 7 years. Turning to those types of medications, no matter what happens in my life, is not an option. Like, if my beautiful girlfriend Tristan dies, if my son dies, if my mom or dad or my friends die, I cannot turn to those substances. So maybe...
Okay. Theory. This is a theory. Again, as somebody that has PTSD, that has panic attacks that I wouldn't describe as panic. I would describe it as outright fucking terror. Like I legit will try to fend for my life, and will attack people if someone comes near me while I'm in a particular state. Unfortunately, that doesn't. Some significant has to happen for me to be in that sort of state. But for me to hear that somebody thinks that at no point they would need those kinds of medications, you never know. You really don't. And fortunately, maybe you haven't had, and this would go for anybody, that if you haven't gone through something that's like life threatening, traumatic, like I'm talking like somebody holding a gun to your head, being attacked, you know, losing a limb in like a car accident, something like that. I'm talking about very severe things here. You'll the mind's way of processing that is going to be very. It's gonna invoke feelings that are nightmares, and you'll feel like you're about to die. So you never know. And I would hope that no one would have to experience that. But sometimes people do. You know? And that's something that I've had, that I'm pretty sure that whenever I try to explain it to people, especially somebody that has never had a severe panic attack or anything like I've had, that they may not fully get it and don't quite understand why I can't leave the house sometimes, or why I am, how things have panned out for me. But I think that he doesn't quite have a grasp on that. And, good. But that matters as far as, I can tell in the formulation of that.
Maybe you might want to listen to me, because I figured out a few ways to deal with the chaos of everyday life without having to turn to a substance. All right?
Okay, and this is where I got mad. That's the thing, is that there are individuals that do have what is their chaos of their everyday life. There are people that do have to take these medications on either a daily basis or off and on for periods of time in their life. They do exist for a reason. And, my mother is an example of somebody that needs to learn better coping skills. Absolutely. But there are people where their vitals, I've had my pulse go up to 155. I would fear for my life. And so to say that it's kind of like somebody coming up to you and saying like, oh, well, just, go take a walk. That is the last thing I want to do. Yes, I'm going to go outside where I am vulnerable to people and try to stand upright and continually walk. No, I want to crawl in a corner until I know I'm safe. Like, that's the last thing that I want to do. Yeah, again, this is not a one-size-fits-all sort of treatment. And the thing is also is that as somebody with trauma, the idea is to plan ahead, or to ideally you don't want to be on these medications for the rest of your life, and if you're able to get off of them, then that's fantastic, and that's something that I hope to do. However, there's a very specific kind of therapy that I need to be able to get through the trauma that I've experienced, and until that time, I'm very limited with what I can actually do. So it's unfair to say that somebody, you know, can completely, you know, exist. Thank you, Nova. I appreciate it. But it's really unfair to say that somebody can exist completely without them, because that's not how that works at all. And I am by no means like, I am not a weak person. I am not a weak person. Like, no. The fact that I need those medications, I'm surprised that I'm as functional as I am.
And some of you might be thinking, well, Chris, you've never had someone close to you pass away. And that is false. When I first got sober,
didn't say that.
and I met with my first sponsor, we were talking about reservations. Like, what's something that could happen in my life that would make me go back to drugs or alcohol? Immediately, I was like, if my grandma dies. Like I said, if my grandma dies, I'm gonna relapse. Like, she was the most important woman in my life. She meant the world to me. I grew up thinking nobody loved me or wanted anything to do with me, but that woman loved the hell out of me. She loved me unconditionally. She spent time with me when nobody else in my family was. Like, she was just one of the most important parts of my life. And I'm so grateful that she got to see me get sober, but just a few years ago, she passed away from Parkinson's disease. And I just got a call one day saying, you know, she's gonna be in hospice and she might live for another month or maybe another year. And I had to deal with that pain, that anxiety, that sadness without taking a single drink or a drug, all right? So I'm not here to toot my own horn or anything, but I just want to have you guys let that sink in for a little bit, all right? There are people like Jordan Peterson who have made a career out of helping other people, but even they have to turn to pharmaceuticals in order to manage the suffering of everyday life. So there's people like me.
Yep. Okay. Oof. Big oof. Big oof. Big oof. Okay. Here's the problem with that. So, yes, experiencing a death in the family with somebody that you're close to, of course that's going to be painful. Absolutely. I'm not saying that it isn't, or nothing like that. And that's something that, as people, is something that we all kind of experience also. And no, not everybody needs to, you know, try and get through that by anesthetizing themselves in some manner. There might be people that are more likely to. There might be somebody that, you know, maybe for a month starts having an issue with alcohol, but isn't really an alcoholic, but that's just how they handled it. Wasn't the best idea, but it happened. Then there's people that, you know, used to have, you know, be full-blown are addicts that were, you know, had a history, and so they're more prone to it turning into a very bad coping skill. But that's something that we as people are gonna, you know, deal with, and that's why we have, you know, grief counselors and people to talk to about that specific kind of thing. Now, to further express how these medications and things like trauma and severe emotional distress, that feeling is different than grief in general. Where'd it go? Now, mind you, I wasn't close with that. Like, we weren't close. But this paperwork all right here is from the lawyer that's handling my grandmother's estate, which is small. It's like a shed. I'm not really getting anything. But this also covers the death of my father. So in here is the death of, you know, it talks about how my father died before my grandmother. So things from the estate are going to, you know, his surviving children. And I looked at the list of all the people that have died, and lots of dead people being talked about in here. This is something I just received. It sucks. It absolutely sucks. It really does. The this feeling and the feeling of panic and terror are two very different things. And what I would say in Jordan Peterson's case is that take somebody, so yes, he lost someone that's close to him. However, this is also somebody that up until like 2015 had been a professor and then spoke out against something he didn't agree with and got thrown into the media, and it was a daily thing. Like, this guy has been talked about daily in some way for the past 3 or 4 years of his life, and then starts doing tours around the world. Like, there are all kinds of, you know, people calling him anything from a Jewish shill to a part of the alt-right. Like, it's just basically any way that he can be discredited, and that's why it's so hard for me to find, you know, any kind of article that's not biased, that's actually going to tell me something accurate. It's because he gets so misrepresented. I mean, there's the Kathy Newman interview. There's the one that was done with GQ. There's the one that was done with this, like, French guy that it's just, whew. But so take into consideration that he's probably been under an immense amount of stress for a while, and that this death may have been the last straw that he could have handled, or rather couldn't. So I can see how somebody would need to be on that kind of medication. But again, it's looking at reports or actual info, and I would actually want to hear it from him, as opposed to any, you know, to the media. I'd want to hear it from him of what actually, you know, was going on, in due time. You guys got quiet.
Who have a ton of experience and have figured out ways to manage our mental health in different ways. All right, so I just want you to think about that real quick, because like I said,
and those are methods that do what work for you.
Comes from the hate mob that attacked and said, like, oh, well, you don't have a degree or a license. Clearly I figured something out. So if you don't want to listen to me and my mental health advice and what I have to say, that's totally cool. But I just want you to sit back and reflect on that for a minute, because if a psychologist like Jordan Peterson has to check himself into rehab because he developed a dependence to anti-anxiety medications, you might want to ask yourself who you're taking.
And at the beginning, I said that anybody who would take that for an extended period of time, regardless of who you are, is going to develop a physical dependency. That will happen. It's just, that's the nature of the medication. You guys got so quiet. Did my voice put you to sleep? So, and there's no, I think that there's the video with his daughter, but there's no news articles. That I see.
Taking all of your advice from. All right, but anyways, like I said, don't forget, my book Rewire Your Anxiety is out. If you have anxiety and want to learn ways that I've been able to cope with my anxiety without having to turn to different substances, check it out. There are a ton of tools in there, all right, and it's available in both ebook and audiobook format. All right, but anyways, that's all I got for this video.
Okay, so that's essentially that. Those are my, I think I pretty much covered all of my thoughts on that. That the big difference here is that, yes, Jordan Peterson is a clinician, and he's actually studied his area of focus was more on personality developments as well as some aspects of addiction. That's why he's really into Union theory as well as tests such as the Big Five or Ocean, comparing different personality traits to how individuals will function in like the workplace or relationships or in things that are very much based on data that has been collected from years of looking into this kind of thing. So this is somebody that he writes a book, and he's doing it from his years of experience as a clinician, and also what he's heard from 25 years of experience as a clinician. He's not using, it might be like sprouted off of something that could start as anecdotal or just as a personal thing, but that's not, the book is clearly to help other people, and it's rooted in his understanding and his studies and his work as a doctor. So that's a bit different than a book that's been written and has things that you found to be effective, but you've, as far as I know, have been the only test subject. You've been the only participant. And so I think that it would suffice to say that that's also not going to be a one-size-fits-all sort of solution. It's like Pirate was saying, the phrase "the solution" instead of "a solution," because again, it's going to work differently for everybody. I've skimmed through some of the cancel book. That was difficult. But I saw the first couple of pages of Rewire Your Anxiety, and I was just really surprised that there wasn't more science or neuroscience talking about how anxiety is manifested in the brain, like what happens. Because for people with anxiety and for people with panic disorder, it can help to understand how that works and how it happens, so that you'll know it's a defense mechanism. It's preparing you to be on guard, but it's just out of balance, as well as firing it at times where that doesn't need to happen. So there could definitely be a lot added to it. Oh, hey, Avery. You can interrupt. This isn't like one of my events or whatever that I used to do. This is the live chat. You guys can talk. It's just a lot of people don't, because they enjoy hearing, they like to listen to me ramble on. Apparently I have a very soothing voice, but I was basically going over how this video was inaccurate. My mom, when she was sick, left me with horrible pain. Yeah, and it can. And, Ativan is, from what I know, one of the, it's not quite as strong. It is still a benzo, but it's not quite as strong. And I mean, I don't know if you were taking it regularly, if it was something that was PRN or as needed. So yeah, it could be over a 6-month period, but maybe you're not taking it every day, which that also changes how one might become physically dependent or not. But I'm sure that, whenever you stopped taking it, that you probably tapered off of it, if you even had to do that, depending on what your schedule was like with it. So yeah, it's frustrating because there are definitely reasons for these medications. Like they do really help some people. They're not all evil at all. Um, and really that's sometimes the only option that somebody will have. Um, I know for me that one of the reasons why I would be scared to get up and like move to another place is I would be so scared that I couldn't find a doctor that would treat, give me the sort of treatment and care that I need, because it is very difficult to find doctors who will prescribe anxiety medications in the way that I take them. But then um, when they see things like police reports, and I show them, hey, this is when this happened, and this is the history of my seizures that were all stress induced. Um, then they look at that, they're like, oh, yeah, well, I'm glad you're alive. you know, Something else that's been, let me try to find, I'll just move that and move my mug over here. Here. Um, Something that was getting to me earlier that I was really worried, and that I am worried about, and fuck it, I'll just go ahead and say it now, is that I'm trying to. There's work potential that I have in the future, something that can be something that can support me and I can do very well with. However, right now, it's not something that I can just start doing. As somebody with PTSD, I actually could get disability, but even getting disability is still a 6 to 12 month nightmare in itself. I think that with proper treatment, I could I could work and at least do so part time, and with the sort of work experience that I have, I can still make enough money to support myself. So I want to try and do that. Now, I've been held back from pursuing that, um, because, and this is why a lot of people didn't understand how badly this was really affecting me, is because I'm helping individuals out with their, you know, online safety and security. Like, I just yesterday there was a woman who said, "Hey, will you see how easy it is for you to find me?" And I'm like, "Sure." Um like, what do you want? And she's just like, just us talking now. Like, I just want to see if you can find me just with us talking. I'm like, okay. And so I basically sort of utilized what's called a social engineering. I was essentially charismatic. um, hey RBF, how's it going? Um, and said, well, we can, tell me what you see whenever you look at this. And I sent her a link. The link was actually a trick. I fished her. Um, However, she was using her phone, and I knew that from that I wasn't probably going to get very much anyway. But I showed her what I found and told her that whenever she's using mobile, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And that for definitely something that's going to be like a PC or what have you, to get a VPN, I think that everybody should have one. Or everybody should have a VPN to at least toggle, especially if you're going to be, a performer online. It's okay, you're fine. Um, but something that has been really worrying me is that starting now and going towards the future, I would be I'd be good. Like, but starting now and surviving the next week, I'm fucked. And the thing that's pretty significant with my own anxiety is the feeling of not. If I feel that my security or safety is in jeopardy or threatened in any way, I become very, very anxious and panicked. And I'm at that place now. And I don't really tell people how bad it gets. Even though I hint at it significantly. Like I hint, like I think I'm dropping the most obvious hints. People still aren't getting it. And I don't want to have to just come out and say something ridiculous, because then it's just like, oh well, she's doing this for attention. I'm like, well, technically I would be, but that's because I'm trying to express that I need help. And so I've desperately been trying to figure out what is a solution for the time being. And now, I mean, this isn't really, shouldn't be a secret anymore, but I used to work in, or I still work in the adult industry, but I do so within IT, freelance. I'm also working on putting together material for basically a resource website. There's somebody, basically a woman who wrote a book on specifically being a phone time operator. And if I share the explanation of this, when I get to that point. I can see how that makes sense, Kat. I can understand that. Yeah, I just get scared that I will no longer have a home or a place to live. I have been homeless multiple times. I've been living in a place and have had someone just kick me out for no reason. So that is a fear of mine, because then I don't have family. I mean, it's paperwork, and they're mostly all dead. And then, the other side of the family, they don't talk to me. So I've pretty much been self-reliant and self-sufficient for the past, since like 2012, at least, because that's when I was divorced. So I've basically created my own jobs for myself, and they've been well paying. But now I'm in a spot where I'm very much stuck. And it's very difficult, especially since I have unfortunately had people that have said things about me in a negative manner regarding, being freelance and, mentioning that or promoting something or what have you. I've had people be shitty in that way. So it makes it even harder for me to try and, figure out a solution to help with what's going on, so that I can basically create a job, basically make a win-win situation for somebody potentially. if it's something that they need help with or whatever. So right now, I probably have pennies to my name. And the thing is that here's something that I want to make very clear. I have absolutely no problem with that being the case as long as I have what I need to be safe and secure. As long as I have medication, as long as I have food, as long as I have a place to live, I don't care about having a bunch of money. I really don't. Please don't tell me it cut out. Okay. Apparently I'm back. So now that had me lose my train of thought. But yeah, the money part doesn't matter to me. It's the being able to get what I need to survive. That's what matters. So what got to me pretty badly earlier is that before the 6-month nightmare, aka the accusation, I had put together my website. I started writing articles and having blog posts and studying all of the different resources for people to look at, comparing them with each other. Everything was putting everything together, and then that all has to stop. And now I'm finally getting back to it. And there's another woman that I was talking about her, that she focuses more on phone stuff and like marketing sort of things. And her and I had talked before and followed each other and all that kind of stuff. But then Twitter went through some sort of like mass purge where it deleted a bunch of accounts that it said were bots, but actually a lot of them were adult performers. And she had been covering that, and I tried to kind of remind her of who I was and everything, while also explaining the situation that happened with me, like why I just dipped for 6 months, why I was nowhere to be seen, because that's not a good quality. If somebody's going to be suggesting you for things. But she didn't remember, us getting to that point. And so trying to reestablish it, explain what happened, and to not have it come across as incredibly heavy. I don't think that she fully read through stuff or realized that it was kind of important and relevant to at least watch one of the videos that I had put together explaining my situation. She does very well, and she deserves it. She absolutely does. She's worked very, very hard. But her not remembering me and the rapport that we had built, even though very brief, and then her saying that she's got so many consult sessions backed up that she's not able to schedule anyone else. Like, how can she figure this out? And I just wanted to be like, I will help. Please let me help. Please. And I couldn't say that. And it's also really hard for me to promote myself as an individual to other to others, because some will think that they don't need the help and then not realize after talking to me for a bit that, oh wow, I could actually be doing a lot better and this could be much easier for me. I hadn't considered these things. I'm glad that I heard you out for 15 minutes at least. So that's why I'm putting together like some sample videos to because everybody can always continue to hone their craft and improve. You always can. There's always room for that. But it's like knowing that I basically have over 10 years of experience in doing this, was very, very successful at it, can no longer be a performer. I want to hand that information down or, share it with other people so that they can have that kind of success, so that they can get the most out of it. But it's not like I can just put that together overnight. I can't just write a book overnight. But I have that much information. I have that much that I could put together. And I can't do it because I'm trying to make sure that I can survive. And I'm not going to be here in a moment. And I've been trying to get very creative and open with, what my options could be. Whether, and whenever I bring things up and offer, things to people or propose an idea, I do it for fucking peanuts. Like, the whole point is so that I can continue to, so that I don't lose what I have. And it feels really shitty sometimes. And this, this isn't to say that the person, that's what they're trying to do or anything, but it does hurt when you start to feel like, since what you do isn't valuable, at this particular time, that you aren't of value yourself, or that being helped out or worked with or anything, that I'm not worth that. And that really gets to me. And it gets to me a lot, especially if I know that there are people that could and don't. And I don't know if it's because they don't know that it's bad. And I'm trying to clarify the best that I can that this isn't just bad in a financial sense. It's more than that. That I want to keep going. That there's a lot that I can contribute and do and I recognize that in myself. So I don't. So even somebody just simply, you know, telling a friend of theirs or whatever, like that actually that means something to me. It's the effort. It's the act, um, which I've always kind of gone by. Just always try to do your best. And I just hope that people try to do their best, whatever their best is for them. So I don't. I also was supposed to get um, victims' compensation and never did. That's infuriating. Um, I've applied for temporary assistance to several different places, and it's really hard to get them to respond to you. And it's just so frustrating because what would help is comparatively so minimal in the grand scheme of things. It's really not much. I mean, this would be a lot different if I didn't have something already figured out and lined up. Um, Something that I know will work because it was starting to. Um, I just, again, had to abandon it. There are ideas that I have as far as what people could do. Um, that I think would be the right thing to do. But yeah, I'm. Fuck it. It's. I. Supposedly there's 10 people watching. There's only really 3 or 4 talking. So it's whatever. But a lot of you know that I take kratom and that I take it for pain. Um, I am gonna be out of that in about 2 days. I don't really have much in the way uh, regarding food. but I can make a little go a long way, fortunately. You wouldn't guess that by looking at me. I have my utilities to pay soon. But the big thing that I'm worried about is the kratom. Because if I'm in pain, then I can't do anything. I can't try to work on the situation. I can't try to catch up or move forward. I will be useless. I will be absolutely fucking useless. Frankly, here's my thought on it. And I think that it makes perfect fucking sense, really, that since this person now has a much larger audience, and they have direct correlation, obviously, with what is now very much affecting me. I mean, if I think of it, I don't know, it just seems like an obvious brainstorming idea to me that if you've got such a large audience or, subscribers, to do something where it's like, hey, she's trying to bridge a gap that, was made difficult, that was not her fault. And since I have now a large platform, here is me, utilizing that to help her. If anything, I would think that that would be the right thing to do. I don't know. I just think it seems reasonable. And again, it would be simply mentioning what it is that I offer and can help people with. It's not a matter of handouts or anything. I actually feel weird about handouts. I want to be able to do something for somebody. So yeah, there is anger that I hold towards somebody, someone different, simply because of the fact that I'm very upset, and I'm trying not to have my freak out moment that I unfortunately sort of alluded to earlier on. My unhinged moment. But to know that you could do something for somebody, you could help them, and in seconds you would change so much. And again, it's nothing about the actual I've been eating ramen lately, like chips. I've been crushing up ramen in a packet and pouring it into a bowl with mayonnaise and sriracha, so spicy mayo, and eating it like that. Yeah, it just it ain't- I just I'm so I wouldn't like if I knew that somebody was being like experiencing pain, that I could help them get through, that wouldn't be hard for me to do, that wouldn't even really be that much for me to do at all, I wouldn't even think twice about it. So the fact that somebody does, it almost makes me like wonder, like, are they trying to cause me pain? Do they not get that if this was actually, if this wasn't that bad, I wouldn't fucking bring it up? Because it takes a lot for me to get to that. A lot. The other thing was that, so within the BDSM and kink industry, and this is something that I'm sure that with my, you know, future work, um, I'll probably share my thoughts and opinions on it, and it might, some people might be a little unhappy, which, whatever. My opinions on something is not how I'm instructing somebody to go about and do it. But there's a fetish. Welcome, Gab. You're at the end. Well, I've kind of gotten through the main point. And now I'm having, I guess you could say, my unhinged moment is a little underwhelming. That there are young girls who, there's a fetish called financial domination. And the way that it's presented and that it happens is just probably one of the most unattractive things I've ever seen. It's basically, it's essentially a very rude, entitled money fetish. I hate it. I am not. I will do sessions where there are elements of financial domination, like, in it, as part of it, but I don't. That's never the focus. Um, and more so, it's the experience that I'm offering, or that I would offer. I feel that it is something I've worked on for years, and something that only I can provide. And, since I corner that market, I can charge what I want. And, you know, So and it's not an it's not like something ridiculous or anything like that, but you know, I don't just expect some guy to just send me money for no reason and then resort to calling him a pig, and then that all he's worth is his wallet to me, and that he will work for me and all this other, like, I have no interest in that. None. That does nothing for me. And here's something just to illustrate a point. Here's something that I did sort of as a, and they didn't catch on to it, which is what was upsetting. So there was a guy that had tweeted that he played poker earlier that night, and that he, or blackjack, and that he won $1,200. Immediately after he did that, all these girls start tweeting like, "Oh, well, you know, really, that's my 1,200, or you earned it for your goddess," and just it's all the same shit. And I'm just like, I pop in and say, I'm like, huh, I think I'd probably be pretty good at that. How does one go about finding, like, where they could do that local, like, play poker locally or whatever? Because then I'm interested in the, you know, mental aspect of bluffing and portraying that. And then he makes some comment back. I think I was the only person he responded to. And I said, it was clear that the way that what I said, I was the only person in that whole, like, thread that was showing any actual dominance by saying, "Oh no, I want to be able to earn the money. The point would be would be to mentally be ahead of you and to take it from you, not have you give it to me, but to beat you at literally your own game." And I had brought that up and mentioned it as that being really the dominant move. And yeah, the whole thread that was going on, I'm just like, these people are they're just like, what, why are they entitled? I was like, at least I made it interesting. But this is something that, this sort of behavior and this, it's a money, who doesn't have a money fetish? I mean, come on. But it's excused and even encouraged, and it's ruined a lot. It's oversaturated the market, like, considerably, and with young women that don't know what they're doing, what they're talking about, that aren't actually dominant, that it's not a part of who they are, that the whole thing is an act, and it's not even a well-informed or well-executed one. So something that gets to me is that I see that there are these materialistic, vapid, superficial, useless shells of human beings that are using vulnerable men and talking down to them and being given money because they're getting attention, I guess. Like, I mean, at least that's what I see publicly. And this is rampant on Twitter. This is rampant. Like, just search the hashtag along with anything else that's related to it. You'll see that it's absolutely rampant. And I'll use the hashtag just to get these girls to read something that might be useful, that's in the realm of, you know, professional BDSM. But it gets to me that there are women who know, surely have to know that I'm, you know, that I at least am trying to bust my ass and struggle. And that I don't really, that I don't do sessions. And I've even said that I can't do them. And then I see their behavior, and it sickens me. I find it just to be disgusting. So it makes it even harder to reach out in that capacity towards women who, brag about it. Yeah, there's actually a large percentage of men that are cross dressers. Um, from doing this for 10 years, there are a lot of men that are actually into cross dressing. And it has nothing to do with their identity or anything like that. It's really, it can be related to a number of different kinks, whether it be feminization, sissification, etc. And it doesn't have anything to do with actually identifying as the other sex. It's more of a role reversal element. And the key that you're talking about goes through a particular contraption. I know what's being referred to here. Yeah. People, you guys get quiet, and I'm not sure if it's because I'm, saying things that are interesting or what. I always get concerned because it still tells me that people are in here, and hopefully they can. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like I can just start doing a session again. Otherwise, I would have had that done. It would have problem solved. I don't know. I've seen people being helped out by their friends in hard times, and not having, you know, close friends IRL, and super close ones online. And the ones that I do have online, I've been told that would be the case with the if I had a podcast, and I I just don't know if the topics that I would cover would go over well, or would I could really find a decent platform for that. I'm just not real sure. So yeah. To anyone who cares, if anything is accomplished tonight and tomorrow, because at least maybe with other things I can work around it. Um, I'm at least trying to make sure that I have my kratom covered. Where? Okay. Yeah, I should be okay for a little bit. But that's basically like my worry and concern right now. When it comes to food or whatever, I can find change and go get rice and beans. I don't worry about that too much. But yeah, I start to get really disappointed in people, and I start to really, I'll start to become really jaded, especially knowing that yeah, there's someone that could help or ideal situation. I would be able to have enough money to be caught up and good for like a month at least while I start working on the website and putting together materials so that you know there's stuff there for people that are looking, that so that I'm just I have time to get it together, that I can finally just fucking breathe and not worry about it. That it's scary to try and present that and ask, because you get people that I don't know if it would be wise for me to just like get it out of my system towards the individual. I think that maybe that would be a bad idea, but yeah, I had a thought. Oh, it's just so fucking confusing, especially if this is something that you're gonna like think about, or that certainly don't potentially brag about or mention your previous philanthropic efforts. Like, just don't. I mean, what's the point of telling me, a person that had just disclosed that they were having problems? Like, are you actually an emotional sadist? Yeah, yeah, I've helped people. Just not you. Like, just don't bring it up. I've also considered reaching out to. Because the other thing is that people that have known me for a longer amount of time, like people that I've worked with, that know you know, understood the industry and what I was doing really well. Um, that would probably go over better, but it's just so frightening to do, because it's that fear again of not doing anything, or and feeling awkward and uncomfortable and whatever. I don't know. It's hard for me to forgive people in those situations. Because I view it as intentionally malicious. Especially if someone actually owes you money. There are two people that actually owe me money, and the total of that is $700. I actually have two people, and the total of what they owe me combined is $700. That's infuriating. And I know that one person is not doing it out of just pride and principle. It's been really, like how I did my video about leafy greens. I think that I was very graceful with it, even though I did call out a lot. Um, I definitely have entertained the whole thought of doing that with others. Um, but usually it would pass, and I'd be like, no, it's the not worth it or not, you know. But when it relates to something that is significant to a part of their identity and would really affect how people might trust them and what they mean, I think that that's also something to potentially like look at. Like when you have someone that says, you know, where communication is important, and then they won't talk to you to communicate what the issues are. That's alarming. Um, like, come on, if you can't practice being honest yourself, or indicate that you have that you listen to those that are talking to you, that's not good for something that requires that of you. And then the interesting side effect of it being that because there was no heads up or preparation, I then wasn't able to handle, or wasn't able to take care of a a bill that I had, which was the bill to a past due bill for my psychiatrist. That almost really, really fucked me over. All right. I feel like I'm getting to the part where I'm kind of talking in circles. I don't know if I'm trying to talk myself into some sort of a solution, or just hope that it happened, or that. Yeah. I think that's all the brainstorming that I can do. Uh, in other news, I do have a uh, page where you can actually, donate and support what I try to do. It's basically Patreon without the commitment. You can do it as a one-time thing if you so choose. Or at least just, tell other people about it. It means a lot. It really does. There are some people that have helped me out with that, and it's it really has meant a lot to me. I'm ready to finally be self-sufficient again. I haven't in a while, and it sucks because it's all related to things that have happened that were completely outside of my control. That's what's so it gets to me so much, is that people think that I'm not able to, or don't have my shit together or whatever, when the reason for being in this situation in the first place was not of my own doing. And if you don't know what happened, that's why there's videos on my channel. It explains it. I did those so that people would understand. That I wanted people to realize that there was really something holding me back sometimes. And that's what I'm going up against and trying to overcome. It's not easy. And there are moments where it feels absolutely impossible. But I'm gonna go ahead and log off. I'm not gonna keep this up. It's gonna be unlisted. There's somebody that had asked about it before. Maybe I'll just have the link that's available on the Ko-fi page for supporters. But yeah, my voice is going hoarse. Well, I have been on for 2 hours now. And I enjoyed that people like hearing me talk, but it got quiet. And I don't want to be repetitive or start to. I'm gonna be a good stop now. So, at any rate, again, if you want to keep up with things and support what I do, that's why I put the link where it is, and it's in other places that you can find it. I'm also on Discord all the time, basically. So yeah, thanks for coming by. I don't know if I'll actually do a video refuting the one that I was talking about earlier. It depends. If he does another one. Thanks, Gav. If he does another one and it gets worse, then maybe I'll have to do it. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm gonna log off. So yeah, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for the likes and all that kind of stuff and what have you. I'm sure there's probably 2 people that came by and gave a dislike for whatever reasons. I don't know. I hacked them or some shit. Good night.